Hey folks, welcome back to Ndaba Hacker. This is Chris once again. And as I warned you over the past several months, ever since November 3rd of 2020, and I sound this alarm bell more frequently as the days pass now. The leftists content they have the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, and in most of its actions, the Supreme Court appears to be captured and not actually ensuring that the Constitution is adhered to. So feeling their oats, the left will now go after one of the few institutions in public service that citizens trust, and that's the military and our veterans. That's right. I warned you. I've told you. And here's the latest. Vile, disgusting assault on the military, disguised as doing the right thing. New Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III, former general officer in the U.S. Army, has ordered a Department of Defense-wide stand-down to discuss the problem of extremism in the ranks. This according to Pentagon Press Secretary John F. Kirby. You know him, Rear Admiral Kirby, who retired, was hired by the State Department to be their spokesperson, and now is in charge of public affairs, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs for the Department of Defense. Well, wow. A stand down to deal with the problem of extremism. See, there's a problem with this, folks. Number one, there's already a mechanism to deal with this. That's right. Department of Defense Instruction 1325.06 entitled Handling Dissent and Protest Activities Among Members of the Armed Forces. Now, this DODI instruction expressly prohibits the military personnel from actively advocating for or participating in supremacist, extremist, or criminal gang doctrine, ideology, or causes. So what is this bullshit, and why is it coming up now? We already have a mechanism to deal with this. We've dealt with extremism in the ranks before, most specifically at Fort Bragg, when we found neo-Nazis operating out of Fort Bragg, harassing and intimidating other service members well over 20 years ago. We've seen this in other cases. So why now? What's this all about? Well, this is all about distorting the narrative and destroying the reputation of the military. Now, this news story will be propagated endlessly to give people the fraudulent impression that the military is full of extremists. And already we see it here. General Austin and Army Chief of Staff, Army General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, have met with service civilian leaders and service chiefs to discuss this problem of extremism. But my question is this. In 2020, when Antifa and Black Lives Matter, a black supremacist organization, and Antifa, a fascist organization, both by mere definition extremist organizations, when they were looting and burning and murdering nearly 70 Americans in the summer of 2020, did the service chiefs and senior civilian leadership meet to discuss the problem of extremism? They didn't need a president to tell them to do that. They're in charge of the services. That's why I have a Secretary of Defense to be responsible for the good conduct order, staffing, resourcing, and employment of the military. So did they meet in the summer when a self-declared Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone was declared in Seattle? Chaz? A seditious, treasonous Declaration of Independence from the United States? Did they meet to see if there were service members active, involved in that? Was there a task force? And if so, why wasn't that advertised? Why don't we know about that? Only now under Unity Joe, the president who shut down our borders to Mexico and Canada, making him, in the logic of the left, a racist because brown folks come from Mexico, and a xenophobe because folks in Canada, white, brown, black, and Native American all look like us anyway, so they must be xenophobic. And clearly a racist president, Joe Biden, who banned travel from South Africa, where 90% of the population are people of color. 80% are black African. So he must be a racist. Well, of course not. Now, whether he's a racist or not, it's a different argument. But those actions don't make him a racist. Of course, that's the logic of the left, who said the same thing about Donald Trump for making the prudent step of suspending travel from China on the 31st of January 2020 after just 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19 were here in the United States. Why are we shutting down? What's the stand down for? This is ridiculous. Now, Rear Admiral Kirby, the spokesman now at the Pentagon, said, the vast majority of men and women who serve in uniform and the military are doing so with honor, integrity, and character, and do not espouse the sort of beliefs that lead to the kind of conduct that can be so detrimental to good order and discipline, and in fact is criminal. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Thank you, Admiral Kirby, for telling us the painfully obvious. Of course the 1.6 million people in uniform are not extremists. They take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. They must live by the Uniform Code of Military Justice and are subject to military and civilian discipline and jurisprudence. The mere fact that you're making this show is disgraceful. So glad that I'm retired from active service now. I would go absolutely bonkers through the roof over this nonsense. Now, Secretary Austin said that while the numbers may be small, they're not as small as anyone would like. Yeah, nor are they as small as they'd like for rapists, shoplifters, spouse abusers, child molesters, and thieves. All of them are in uniform, active duty. Fortunately, the number is very small. Will we do a stand down to get rid of these people who are blot on military service? No. And we didn't do a stand down to deal with the extremists who support Black Lives Matter, racial supremacy, and Antifa's fascist tactics last year. I don't recall ever having a stand down in 36 and a half years in uniform to address the Ku Klux Klan. Why? Because we didn't have it in our midst. This is an intentional effort to undermine the reputation and integrity of those who serve in uniform, and it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. For as Secretary Austin says later, he says, it's a leadership issue. And then Kirby says, it's got to be a leadership issue down to the lowest levels, small unit leadership, all the way up to him, to Secretary Austin. So if you consider it's a leadership issue, then maybe there will be some potential solutions there to allow us greater visibility. This is the reason why military commanders have such powerful command authority over their service members, to prevent this sort of behavior and activity. Wow. The stand down will occur over the next 60 days. And Rear Admiral Kirby says this is so each service, each command, and each unit can take the time out to have these needed discussions with the men and women of the force. Needed discussions. Now here's the problem, folks. What constitutes extremist activity? I've just defined support for Black Lives Matter and Antifa as extremist activity, and I stand by that conclusion based on their actions. But what will be extremist activity? Well, this is all about stopping political dissent. Now, service members are governed by DOD instructions and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which prevents them from doing certain things when it comes to politics. That's already a restriction. But this is really about eviscerating freedom of assembly and destroying the reputation of the military and veterans. We saw this already. Yep, we've said Kirby noted in his speech to the press that some of the extremists who stormed the Capitol building on January 6th were active duty service members and others were military veterans. Really? Now, we've seen people report so-called military veterans, but there's been no follow-up. I haven't seen any reports of any active duty personnel present who broke into the building. And that's the only thing we should be talking about. There are disciplinary actions for those who walked into the building, which is criminal trespassing, even though the police invited them in. So arguably, that's not even criminal trespassing. But for the 36 people who broke into the building and committed criminal trespass, who are these active duty? Stop telling us there were some active duty. Name them. Name them. There's no reason to shield their identities if they committed these crimes. Name them. Stop denigrating 1.6 million active duty service members. It's disgraceful. No stand down over extremism for Black Lives Matter or Antifa. 8 years of Black Lives Matter, of Antifa under Obama and Trump. Almost 10 years of this nonsense. Never a single stand down. We do Stacey stand downs all the time. We get preached to about transgenderism and sexual harassment and sexual assault. Things that people should be aware of and know about every single day, not once a year through annual training or a stand down to preach to people and condescend to them about extremism. This is disgraceful. This is the intrusion of politics into the good order and conduct of the military. It's disgraceful. Folks, if you're not a subscriber to Chris White Africa, hey, why not become one? Free analysis, opinion, and news updates about a variety of topics around the globe. Politics of the USA, Liberty Under Assault, Rugby Ascendant, the Boca List, South Africa. Feel free to leave a comment if you like. Abusive comments will be deleted, and insulting and abusive comments will be reported to YouTube. And finally, give us a like. Smash that like button, folks. Thanks a lot for your time, for your patronage, and for your custom. Have a good day, folks.